What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the vlog. It is a great day.
It is a great day, Luke. So, what are we going to talk about tonight?
I'm going to do a Q&R, question and response.
I was like, where are you going with that? So, a couple days ago, I asked some questions on my Instagram story about what videos you guys wanted to see, and we picked one of the responses to talk about tonight. Okay, the question was, doing a video on the courage to move and step out into your calling. So that is what we're going to talk about. It's going to be lit. Okay, so this is a subject that is very near and dear to our hearts. God has really been strengthening us in the aspect of having courage to step out into our calling. It's been something that really since we've been married, it's been a really big thing, and God's really challenged us, and we've really grown a lot in that, especially in the last, I would say, year since we were called to move to Joplin. And so we'll kind of talk about the story of us moving to Joplin and then us moving up here to Kansas City. Both of those are huge, courageous moves that God has called us to. And yeah, we'll just share some of like our story and kind of how we dealt with some of those things, and how the Lord used it in the midst of it. So the move to Kansas City is a really cool story. So I'm excited to like talk about it in depth because we haven't ever really talked about it much. So do you want to talk about us being called to move to Joplin?
Jomo Yomo.
Jomo Yomo.
February last
Sunday.
year, Vision Sunday. They said they announced they were launching the campus in Joplin. We felt like we were supposed to go, and we went.
At first, I thought we were supposed to just attend, like continue to live where we were in Ozark. And I had a job at James River Church, and I loved it. It was like I was doing what I loved to do, and it was what I was passionate about. And I'm so thankful for that time that I had there. But I didn't want to leave. I figured I'd be there for forever. I would have if the Lord let me, but he didn't. So, but yeah, so I'll let you keep talking. Sorry.
So yeah, I felt like we were going to move to Joplin. I also, back in when I was in high school, I felt like I was going to be in Joplin at one point doing ministry, and I did. So we felt that, we talked about it, we prayed about it, fasted, and we knew that's what God was wanting us to do. And so when, what was it, June we moved?
Yeah, we moved in June.
Yeah.
But
Talk about how we found the place.
yeah, so in April, there was an interest meeting at the Joplin campus, and we went, and we had just went that weekend before to look at, actually it was the day before. We went the day before this interest meeting to look at these apartments in Joplin, and we went and looked, and they weren't like
sketchy as frick.
They were sketchy, but they weren't like awful. We were both kind of like, well,
I didn't like them at all.
I mean, I was just.
They were the size of our living room now.
Literally.
And our living room now is small.
And I was pregnant at the time, and so we obviously knew, like, we were going to have a baby there, and it was very, very small, but we were both kind of like, well, we don't have another option, like, that's in our price range. Like, apartments can get expensive, and so we were like, well, you know, I guess we're just going to have to deal with it. And so we went to the interest meeting the next day, and I actually had a conversation with a woman I didn't know at the time. She lived in Joplin, and she asked us where we were going to be living, and I told her, and she was like, do not live there. That, you know, it's in a really bad area. Like, because obviously we didn't know the areas like that were sketchy in Joplin, because I'd been there like once in my life. And so we were like, well, like, we don't have another option. We were kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do? I immediately started to panic because I was like, I don't know what we're going to do, you know? And so she was like, well, let me, I gave her my phone number, and she was going to contact a landlord where she used to live in these duplexes in Joplin. And then she texted me like a week later, and she was like, hey, I talked to the landlord, and he has one available at the end of May, the beginning of June. and they're $700 a month, which was like what we said we wanted to pay. And we were like, okay, like great. So I talked to the landlord, we went and looked at them, beautiful duplexes. They're pretty new. They were in the path, like the tornado went down, so everything was new in that area. So it was a really nice area. And then we moved in. We weren't wanting to move until August, but then we moved there in June. And I think looking back now, I'm glad that we moved then, because it was a really hard transition for me. Not really for you as much, because he can move anywhere and not be phased. But I like to, when I get comfortable, I don't want to leave. And we were very comfortable in Ozark. And so we moved in June. And then Luke didn't have a job for a month.
Nope.
Tell him about that time.
Oh, I hated it. I stressed the whole entire time because I was like, I have to provide. We're gonna have a baby in like 2 months. I was like, we need money, and God's like, nah, I need you to rest and enjoy this time off. And that was a life lesson. And like, now knowing that like God, if you go somewhere and you don't get a job right away and you apply over and over again at so many different places, you don't get a job. God has a plan. He hasn't forgotten about you. And it was tough for me to realize in the moment, because I'm like, but God, like, I need a job. And God's like, nah, you just
rest.
Rely on me and rest. And
I know the whole time I was like, I knew like in my spirit that it was a resting period for him, because he just left a job that he hated, and we had just moved, and we were about to go into camp season, and then we were about to have a baby, and I was like, you just need to take this, time that God's giving you.
Stop.
He doesn't know how to stop.
I go nonstop.
No. And so it was a really hard season of that month of him not having a job, and then God provided the perfect job for you.
Yeah, literally. I only remember who like got us in contact.
Someone from Joplin.
Yeah.
Again, it was just like us like trying to reach out and talk to the people that we knew there and just ask, is there any openings? And finally that job came up at the perfect time. And so it's just another one of those things that
I started right after camp season.
Right, yeah.
So I had camp. We went to 2 weeks to camp, and I started right after the second week of camp.
Yeah, so literally like God allowed us to go to camp, and for 2 weeks, a week and a half. I almost went into labor at that second camp, so we had to leave early. But God allowed us to go and provided the money for us, to not. And even when we were starting to like not have money, we were given gift cards randomly, like for like this welcome basket. There was like tons of gift cards, and like in the times that like we were like, what are we gonna do? It was like there was a gift card, and there was a gift card for Walmart. There's a gift, and then Luke got the job, and it was perfect. So even when like it didn't look like it was gonna work out, like God still made a way in that scary season that we went through. So
that was crazy, because in that time we were still driving back to Springfield for church and like serving. And
there's a lot of gas money.
A lot of gas money.
But God provided over and over again. And God really moved us out of Ozark gently, and it wasn't like abruptly, like you're leaving everybody you're going to this place you've never been. We did move to a place we'd never been, but we still had church in Ozark that we went to Wednesdays and Sundays. So it was like we were still there, we were still serving, and we were still around the people that we knew and we loved. And it really helped the transition. For me especially, because I'm a giant spaz, so I don't like change very much. But we moved. Luke got that job, and then our season in Joplin, we knew we weren't going to be there forever.
Yeah.
We had kind of mentioned this in our first video that we did, and we figured we'd be there for 5 years. That was like our commitment in our heart, to move to Joplin for 5 years, to be a part of our church and our youth. And we had an amazing life group with our youth, and Luke got the job, our life group, Seattle, we had her, and it was, the newborn crazy stage was kind of calming down. So we were kind of like in a groove and things were comfortable and
Yeah.
great, honestly.
I felt like we were in our grace period. Like we
Yeah.
just were striving, and yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then in January, I had a dream. I have dreams, okay? Like, when I have dreams, they, like, mean something, and it sounds, like, super spiritual and weird, but,
She's like Daniel.
I'm like Daniel.
Like no,
Seattle's
Joseph.
name.
Joseph. I'm sorry. It's
Whoever.
not Daniel. It's Joseph. I'm sorry. But Tori's like Joseph in
Yeah.
a dream.
So, anyway, I had a dream one night, and I woke up knowing that I felt a peace about leaving James River, and which was insane because James River was our home, was everything. You know, that's just it was our home, and the last thing in my mind, I did not think we would be leaving James River anytime soon. So to wake up and I just like, I don't know, it's like God spoke to me like, you're released from James River. And I didn't say a word about it to Luke because I didn't really want to believe it. I was kind of like,
jump all over it.
Yeah, he was being like, okay, like, you know, and I wasn't ready for that. So one day after church, we went to lunch with a friend, and I don't know why, but I just said it out loud. I said, he was saying something like, you know, I feel like you guys are gonna go a certain direction, and I said, well, that's funny that you say that because I had a dream. It was about a week ago from then, and I said that I felt like we were released from James River, and Luke was like, really? You know, like he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know, you know, any of the details. But this was probably the second week in January. So we're just kind of processing. We, again, started to feel Kansas City. We started having that laid in our hearts. It's been something that I felt like we were going to move here next in July. I remember texting Luke and being like, I feel like we're going to move to Kansas City next. He's like, okay, you know, but it was just like a random passing comment. Yeah. But we started praying about it, started thinking about it, and we were like, well, our lease is up in June because we had moved there in June the year before.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, so we just looking at apartments and like looking, because the cost of living up here is a little more expensive. So we were like, we're probably just gonna have to live in an apartment at first. Then I was looking at some apartments, and again, I felt that we were gonna be moving in March, or like I saw March, and in my spirit, I felt like we were gonna be there in March. And I, again, didn't tell Luke because I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That sounds insane. So I didn't say anything. And then what was it, like 2 weeks later, maybe a week later, my mom calls me, and she was like, hey, so I was talking to one of my friends, and my mom's from this area, so she knows people here, and she said I was talking to one of my friends. She lives in Lee Summit, and she lives in these townhouses, and the landlord my mom went to high school with, and so she's like, I know them, like, you should check it out. So I called him, and he was like, yeah, like, we actually have one available right now. And I told Luke, I said, I feel like we're gonna move before we think we are, you know. And so we came up here like that weekend, came and looked at it. It was perfect. He cut off like
$100.
or more dollars off of rent for us because he knows my mom. And then he didn't charge us a deposit. He didn't charge us, like, it was literally just first and last month's rent, and you guys can move in. And so we were like, oh my gosh, you know, it was crazy. So, but we were like, well, I wonder if we're going to have to pay out of our lease in Joplin because it wasn't up until June.
Yeah.
So I called our landlord, that was in Joplin, and I was like nervous. I was like, I don't know what he's going to say. Like, he's going to make us pay out of it or whatever. And I just explained the situation and like what God's doing, like just what God's been, you know, laying on our hearts. And he was like, well, let me call you back. And so he texted me and he said, okay, so you can do one of two things. We can either find someone to move in before March 1st, and I won't charge you to get out of it, and I'll give you your deposit back. And we were like, okay. And then the second option was pay March rent, and that's it. And so we were like, okay, well, that's probably what we're gonna have to do, because who the heck's gonna move in? This was like February 15th.
Yeah,
like
2 weeks.
It was like 2 weeks until March 1st. And so we were like, that's insane. Like, there's no way. So the next day at church, because that was a Saturday, so Sunday, we were talking with someone, and we were just telling him like what our landlord said, and he said we knew a couple who was getting ready to move to Joplin for the campus, and I had talked to her like a week ago, and she had said, yeah, like we found a place in Carthage, like it's gonna be great, like we move in February 23rd and all this, and I was like, great. So he said, why don't you bring it up to them? And I was like, they already have a place, like there's no way, like we talked, like yeah. I know that that's not a possibility. But I just felt like the Lord was like, just ask. And I was like, okay, and we hadn't told anybody that we're moving to Kansas City yet.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think we had told your parents at this point, because it was like going to be such an abrupt thing.
Actually, we told our parents.
Maybe my parents. I don't know. Anyway, so then we at church the next day, I just was like, okay, I'm going to ask her. So I sat her down and I was like, here's the deal. Like, here's what's going on. And she was like, let me talk to my husband. So she texted me, and she was like, yeah, like we feel like this is not a coincidence, and this is not something that just happened.
Because
like,
they were wanting to move they're moving there the week when we were needing to be out,
like, it's the exact time. And so they're like, okay. So they got everything squared away with the landlord. They paid their deposit, and then we literally moved out the day before they moved in. So it was literally like a week and a half from when we came up here, and then we were like gone. And it was literally so crazy, like how all that happened. Like, God was all over it, and he's been all over it since we've been here. Like, there's just like, I don't know, there's a grace when you step out into what God's calling you to do. It just requires courage, and I don't know, we're still in shock, like we're still in awe, thinking back to that story, thinking back to like how God moved to get us to Joplin, and then how God moved to get us to Kansas City. Like, there's no doubt that like it was God, like, and it's just been the craziest thing ever.
But I think with the step of obedience that we took, it was necessary. Like, moving to Joplin, I think it was a lesson of obedience. Like, God seen, like, it was a test to see if we would be obedient and moving someplace we never been before, and a place that is foreign to us, and that we didn't really want to go to. I mean, Joplin was great, but we didn't really want to move to Joplin. But seeing if we would be obedient in that, and see what our character would be like if we were to move. It was a builder of character, I guess.
Because the move here was so easy, like compared to moving to Joplin, because that was like our first step of faith, and it was hard, and it was a really hard season in Joplin, and just because I think we both knew that we weren't going to be there very long, and so there was like an uneasiness of like, I just want to like get out, but we knew God had a lot to teach us there. And I'm seriously like, if we hadn't have gone to Joplin, we would not be who we are today. Like, it like birthed a courage and a strength and just character that we didn't even know we had. And I see a change in myself, and I see a change in him, in our confidence, in our just our ability to lead to the best of our ability, like at our new church. And I don't know, like Joplin had to happen in order for us to be here and in Kansas City. Like those lessons, those things that we learned there, like they were necessary for moving up here. And sometimes you have to walk through the desert and to get to the promised land. And I'm not saying like Kansas City, we're going to be here forever, because who even knows like where we're going to be? Like, honestly, like I don't even know anymore, so, cause I never would have thought we would have been here this soon. So, God has a plan, and I mean, we have a peace about being here.
Obviously,
you know,
otherwise we wouldn't be here.
obviously. But
It's like a plant. That's what I think of every time when I think about like stepping out. I think when you begin to think about stepping out, it's like, well, first when it's laid on your heart, it's a seed being planted, and when you begin to think about it, it's being watered, and then it just continues to grow each time you think about it and continue to like have faith into what God's going to do through it. Because I mean, faith has to grow somehow, and you have to trust God through it. And when you trust God, your faith grows.
Yeah. And, you know, when you go from season to season and place to place, I think that you just outgrow your pot that you're planted in. Mm-hmm. And, you know, God will make that so obvious when you are about to outgrow that pot. Because, you know, you'll just see things differently. God will put a piece. Peace is just so important to have when it comes to making a decision, because you don't want to step out because you think you're supposed to step out. You really, like, if you don't have a peace about it, then don't do it.
Yeah.
So
Pastor John.
That's Pastor John. And I think I go back to that all the time because it's just so true. Like, peace is like the guide of like what you should do, and, you know, because the Holy Spirit guides you. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's going to be an uneasiness, and there's going to be, you know, like your spirit, you're just not going to feel good about it. And a lot of people make decisions because out of emotion, and they don't look to like what God is saying to you, what the Holy Spirit is leading you to do. And so if I would say anything, it's when you go to step out in faith and you don't have a peace about it, then don't do it. Because it either might not be the right time to do it, or you're not supposed to do it at all. You know, if it's just something that you yourself want to do, then, you know, there's a disconnect.
That's also where it becomes very important to have a mentor or someone you trust very deeply to speak into your life. Tell them like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I feel like God's calling me to do.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, do you think this is me just making it up, or do you think it's truly coming from God?
Yeah.
And with that too, I think if it's good, if it's going to be, I don't know, I just think if it's going to be beneficial to your life, it's going to be from God to begin with.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are like, well, is this God or is this me? You know, and if it lines up with his word, and then it's probably God, you know? Like, I don't think that something good that is in line with his will is going to be, because if it's not from God, it's from the enemy, you know? And so if it's that, then you're just going to know. You're going to have a peace that surpasses all of your understanding, because to the world, us moving to Joplin and then 8 months later moving to Kansas City because we know we're supposed to be here, that looks insane to everybody. And like to the world, it looks crazy. But God doesn't call us to live a comfortable and, you know, ordinary life. Like, he's going to call us to the extraordinary, and you have to be willing and able to step out when he calls you. And if he calls you to move in 2 weeks, then pack up your stuff, you know, and do it, because he's going to blow your mind, and he's going to do more than you could ever ask or imagine, in your heart, in your life, and in the lives around you. Because something that I've learned is it's not about us. It's not about our will, our needs, us. It's about God's will, and that's what he's accomplishing through us. Mm-hmm. And so us moving here is going to affect lives around us, and that's part of God's will. And I think you have to kind of like humble yourself in that way sometimes and be like, this is God's will. This is what God's doing. This isn't me. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would say about it. So.
And if God does lay something on your heart, and it's not right now, just know God isn't going to forget about it. He doesn't promise something and just not deliver. I mean, look at Abraham with his son Isaac. God promised him that he'd have a son and had descendants as many as the stars. Abraham didn't see that until he was like 90 something years old.
And it looked impossible.
Yeah. So, and also on top of that, Abraham also tried going out and making, going out and doing it himself too. And doing that, you're shortcutting the process. And when you shortcut the process, you shortcut the product. Shortcut the product.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
trust God.
Just trust God.
Allow God,
If you
trust God.
don't have a peace about it, don't do it, and just believe that God has more for you. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. It's something that we have walked through, and I'm not saying that, you know, we're the wisest people, but we do have some wisdom from walking, you know, this path that God has put us on. And also when it comes to stepping out, just remember that the lamp unto your feet only shows the next step. It doesn't show the whole path, you know, and when you step out in obedience and you step out, there's going to be questions, there's going to be doubts, there's going to be things that you're like, but God, you called me here. What are you doing? Where are you? And, you know, he will show you in his time. He will do exactly what he is going to do in his time. And we saw that quote. It's like, God is so much more excited to get you where you're going than you are. Like, he is so excited to get you to the point of like where he's calling you to be. So you just need to be patient and just wait on God, because he's going to provide. He's going to do what he promised. And you just need to trust that next step that he's lighting up for you.
Yeah.
So
definitely,
that's our 2 cents. So I hope that encourages you, that it gives you builds your faith a little bit. And I love talking about this kind of stuff. So we will definitely do more of these to answer questions and that sort of thing.
So be steady in God's word and be obedient.
Yep.
2 takeaways from today's talk.
Talk time with the Davises. So
we love you all.
We love you guys.
We'll catch you all on the flippity flip.
Catch you on the flip side.